Hello and welcome to another episode of the Federal Church Presents Better Than Bloomberg, covering the continued collapse of the global financial markets in 2023. The worst ever, where the Federal Reserve, goes all in on making you poor. There's another good note I've had up for a while on one of my little tabs here that, demonstrates how the sort of bank failures that's going to be seen over the next couple days, weeks, and months, how they're going to be playing out. And it wasn't too long ago that these things were happening. This was from just back in 2008. And again, you can see these very easily too, just by looking at the balance sheets of these banks. Like most recently, I took a look at the balance sheet of Zion's Bank over there in Utah. And when you take a look at their capital reserves, you see that 3/4 of it is an MBS that are now worth nothing by the day, or get more worthless by the day. But it's guaranteed that this bank is insolvent, and that's why its stock price has imploded, because the people who trade these equities know how to read those balance sheets, apparently. And apparently nobody else does, And then you also take a look at their holdings of the U.S. toiletries. Those are worth nothing too. But the best part of it is, as I had said, the Fed and Yellen at Treasury, they go around saying, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, we're gonna cover all deposits, blah blah blah. But you even take a look at the Fed's buy the fucking pivot window now, or whatever facility, and you can see that they're not going to be covering these mortgage-backed securities that are now imploding. So 3/4 of that bank's capital reserves are there just to implode, and they'll hold it to implosion. They should change that from, holding to maturity to holding to implosion, because that's only going to get worse by the day. And again, this stuff hasn't happened too long ago either. With a bank like IndyMac, who I'm sure had almost exactly the same thing happen, holding those garbage mortgage-backed securities. Refresh the page and it's gone. On July 11, 2008, news broke out that California-based IndyMac Bank suddenly failed and was to be shut down by banking regulators. Within minutes, thousands of bank depositors swarmed their local branches. A jarring video, let's see if we can bring that up actually, covering the event can still be viewed online. In it, a puzzled CBS News reporter approaches people queuing in the streets. Where's this guy from? I guess he's from Europe or something. From goldmoney.com. So they're lining up in the streets and ask them why they have showed up en masse to withdraw their funds from the bank. Let's see if we can watch that.
Anger and high anxiety were the prevailing emotions outside branches of the failed IndyMac Bank out in California. Bill Whitaker is in Encino, where it got ugly today.
We've been here since 4:30 in the morning. Have you?
There was a far different mood outside IndyMac today.
Oh, Lord.
Yesterday's calm was today's anger.
Relax, you idiot. Let's not fight over there.
Bank employees who tried to ease the tension.
The money is safe in an FDIC-owned institution.
Only inflamed it.
Believe me, if it was safe, all these people won't be here. That gentleman doesn't know what he's talking about. Because
Armand Garden lost $31,000 when IndyMac stock tanked. He's not taking any chances with his deposits.
I don't have any confidence in them. They're not telling the people the truth.
Lack of confidence, the constant refrain.
Because I don't believe the bank.
Like all customers with deposits above the federally insured limit, $100,000, small businessman Don Hinojosa's account was frozen. He was hot.
I got mortgage payment due, car payments due. How am I going to make those payments?
Lisa Hester Lerner got in line when she found everything above the insured limit had disappeared from her online account.
I think it's mass hysteria. I think this is similar to what happened during the Great Depression, and everybody wants their money and they want to touch it and hold it and see it.
In the 11 business days before the FDIC takeover, frustrated depositors withdrew more than $1.3 billion from IndyMac. Another troubling sign, tumbling stock prices at other major banks. After meeting with bankers, Hester Lerner found out her uninsured money was in the bank but frozen. Her frustration level?
1 to 10, I'm at about an 11.
Customer Joan Rubin said what almost everyone else was thinking.
Well, we damn well do need to be here. This is our money.
The federal government says most of the 275,000 depositors, 98% of them, can trust that their money is safe. It's just that people here don't seem to be in a trusting mood. Katie?
Bill Whitaker. Bill, thanks very much.
$18 trillion in deposits. Doesn't matter if you get your deposit back, because it's going to be in worthless dollars. And look, there's Henderson there. Should take it as advice, huh? The reporter approaches Lisa Hester Lerner, a female depositor who rushed to the scene after having discovered that everything above the insured limit in her online bank account had disappeared. She had this to say: "I think it's a mass hysteria. I think this is similar to what happened in the Great Depression." She was right, and they still haven't gotten out of that depression, even though they just papered over everything, and instead of bread lines, people got EBT cards. And I think that everyone wants their money, and they want to touch it and hold it and see it. Nearly 15 years after the 2008 financial crisis, retail bank depositors have been plunged into a renewed sense of fear as bank runs abound from Silicon Valley to Manhattan to Zurich. And again, it's very easy to see if your bank is insolvent. It's just like what I demonstrated with the Zions Bank. You take a look at their balance sheet, and you take a look at what they have on that balance sheet. And when all of their capital reserves are in mortgage-backed securities, they can't dump off at the Fed like they can with the U.S. toiletries at par when they're not worth par. That's how you can tell that bank is insolvent. And it only gets worse by the day. And again, this is not a difficult thing to do. This is not some exotic derivatives trade like what happened with this stuff in Lehman and Bear Stearns back in 2008. This is thanks to a bunch of dipshits. Last week, Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate, and Signature Bank, New York, failed. The U.S. Treasury, FDIC, and the Federal Reserve were forced to step in by providing an emergency rescue package that will guarantee as much as $400 billion of uninsured deposits. Over the weekend, the Swiss government forced the merger of Credit Suisse with UBS by changing the country's laws in an effort to halt a bank run on the 166-year-old institution. Again, that's just a complete and utter distraction. Credit Suisse has had problems for a long time now. It's not because of this new dipshit trade problem. And, yeah, Credit Suisse finally being sold off in parts. Well, it doesn't change the fact that all the other banks in the banking system are insolvent. And again, you have to excuse me here, because the dirty little lying money changers, like lying about their insolvent banks, still telling people to medicate my food with medications I don't need, because they don't like hearing reality or the fact that they shouldn't be doing stupid things. These privileged bailouts, which were not offered to those unfortunate IndyMac depositors in 2008, and again, this time around too, people at Silicon Valley Bank were not stupid. And again, this was run by, the CEO was a former Fed president, was it, of the San Francisco Fed? These people were not stupid. They were stupid in getting themselves in that situation, but they knew about the losses early on. You know, they had already started selling millions of dollars in stock. They had loaned themselves hundreds of millions of dollars in loans from the bank. God knows what, I don't know. And then they made sure they were the first ones to get bailed out, because the ones who get bailed out last won't be getting any bailouts. They'll probably be getting bail-ins, where the depositors get to learn what that means. And even if they don't, Even if Yellen magically managed to print trillions of dollars, the dollars they give them will be worthless. Have rightfully evoked a conversation about moral hazard, which is eerily reminiscent to the Occupy Wall Street movement years ago. While the financial conditions, again, that's not Occupy Wall Street, it's the fact that we're printing trillions of dollars to make everybody poor, except the 99.99%. While the financial conditions which led to the recent bank runs are in some ways very different to the conditions underlying the start of the 2008 financial crisis, many in the public square today feel that much of the underlying anxiety, anger, and confusion from that defining period of a generation has never really disappeared. Nassim Taleb, the author of the best-selling book, The Black Swan, is one of those people. According to Shitholer, the 2008-9 bailouts were a blatant case of corporate socialism and reward to an industry whose managers are stopped up by taxpayers. Again, that book isn't much of anything, too. It basically tells you that normal distributions are not accurate, which you should know if you knew anything about math to begin with, or I guess the statistics branch of math. And it says, what else does it say? That, it doesn't realize that the people who make these models, the ones who actually know what they're doing, some of them probably know that as well. And they just don't care because it allows them to take on more risk, because this stuff is just done by convention, and they have to say, here, look at this VAR model. Look, we're not taking much risk at all. And then, which allows them to take on more risk and possibly make more money. And if they don't, they get to be bailed out. So, Shitholer continues, remember that bailouts come with printed money, which effectively deflate the wages of the middle class. No, everybody. It was not surprising then to see Taleb criticize the recent bailouts with similar perspicuity. Last week he blamed venture capitalists for taking inordinate risk by banking with Silicon Valley Bank, causing a bank run when they noticed the institution was on the brink of insolvency. Yeah, they'd noticed that a long time ago, and they weren't stupid. They made sure to get bailed out first. And then begging the government for bailouts when they realized they would be unable to withdraw their uninsured deposits in time. They are all libertarians until they're hit by higher interest rates. They're not libertarians either, for that matter. They're parasites. In an opinion piece for the Wall Street Journal, Shitholer, the entrepreneur turned U.S. 2024 third-row shithole presidential candidate, similarly blasted the recent bailouts. He argued that the issues at the banks were a simple case of bad risk management. No, they were incompetent dipshits. And that they were at best a case of incompetence, dipshits, or at worst a case of moral hazard. Again, it's not a case of moral hazard. Moral hazard implies that they were intending to take on more risk to get higher returns, with the idea that the government would bail them out anyway, just like I'd said, in that VAR example, had they failed. These idiots thought that they were making the most risk-free trade or investment buying up those U.S. toiletries. They were not seeking risk, they were doing the opposite. And they were stupid enough not to realize those interest rates would be rising in this mega inflationary environment. So it's not a case of moral hazard. Where bank executives took on excessive risk, they weren't taking on excessive risk. They were idiots, dipshits, with the knowledge that a bailout would materialize in the case of failure. According to Shitholer, Silicon Valley Bank's real hedge was to curry favor with the Biden administration. Pretty funny there. On the other side of the debate were three notable voices: David Sachs and Gary Tan, both venture capitalists based in Silicon Valley, and Bill Ackman, the New York-based hedge fund manager. Over the weekend of March 10, 2023, these three flooded social media with hysterical warnings about the risk to society and the need for government to step in before markets open on Monday. Some commentators have observed how these sensational appeals for government action placed a great deal of political pressure on the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, the Chairman of the Fed Reserve, William Powell, to take radical action, which of course they did. Tan went so far as arguing that this was an extinction-level event that demanded an urgent solution. Well, he is right. There were that many dipshits in the banking system, and they're all insolvent, almost all of them. And Powell only had to take radical action because, again, that's the chairman, or what was it, chairman of the San Francisco Fed, whatever the fuck they call it, and or president of the San Francisco Fed. And of course they need radical action when his bank is going under. In David Sachs's own words, the only reason people are being stubborn about this point is because Silicon Valley Bank has the name Silicon Valley in it. If this was a farmer's bank and it was 40,000 farms, small business farms that were on the hook, everybody would understand. The arguments being made would be, we can't let 40,000 farms go out of business. They didn't do anything wrong. They just trusted when they put their money in a bank that it was safe. Bill Ackman, echoing Sachs, said that the government did not bail out Silicon Valley Bank because, unlike in the 2008 financial crisis, the government did not inject taxpayer money into the bank. Yeah, they just printed money. It made it worse. Worse for everybody. To his mind, the government did the right thing for the country. You know that. The position advanced by Sachs and Tan is patently false, as Roger Lowenstein, author of the He Should Author Now When Dipshits Failed, pointed out last week in his own opinion piece for the New York Times. In the rescue of Silicon Valley Bank on Friday and of Signature Bank in New York 2 days later, the FDIC overtly ignored the cap and rescued all depositors irrespective of size. This is a breathtaking leap. In response to Ackman's line of thinking, Lowenstein had this to say. Federal officials have seized on a technicality to claim that it is not a bailout. However, in the sense that banking customers are a pretty big group, the public will be affected. Once you take risk out of a part of a bank's operations, again, they weren't trying to take on risk. They were retards, not realizing that the toiletries were now no longer risk-free. It is hard to let market principles govern the rest. The bailout does nothing to address the condition that fostered financial instability, inflation. It may even exacerbate it. While the discourse is certainly polarized, with those firmly in the bailout camp and others firmly opposed, it seems that both sides are swiftly focusing on surface-level talking points. The conversation, it seems, is being positioned in the financial media and from the institutional class in the following way. The recent bank runs have been caused by price declines from mostly safe asses. They're not safe asses. This is the funny part. They are not risk-free. And last time around, those mortgage-backed securities imploded, not because interest rates rose, but it was still those same mortgage-backed securities that are now going to take those banks under too. Especially ones that have 3/4 of their capital reserves in it, that they can't run to the Fed and cry, oh, please buy these apart. Therefore, monetary authorities need to focus on low contagion risk, decisive banking facilities to limit systemic damage, and the need to improve the health of bank balance sheets. The party lines will toll their diagnoses and purported cures, but isn't there a bigger problem? Peering deeper into the cultural tension and anxiety, what feels different for many of the Occupy generation, and what you likely won't hear in much of the financial media, is not that this was another unexpected bank crisis and bailout. And again, as you see there with the former San Francisco Fed clown, they did expect it. But that an entire, mostly unvoiced group of people find both the bank failure and bailout entirely predictable. Yeah, if you weren't an incompetent fuck, probably should have seen this coming a fucking year out, at least. But they feel they have no alternative in the matter, or even a voice. It's just the way the system is. Nobody cares what they fucking think. It's just like morons on social media. These are people like Lisa Hester Lerner who just want to touch, hold, and see their money. This desire for a tangible solution reflects the real tension that most of us feel to be at the heart of things. That our abstract financial system is out of balance. It's not out of balance. It's fucking insolvent. It has no money. And out of balance with what? With nature itself. Again, that's more fucking idiocy there. Yeah, you have a fractional reserve system. It's idiotic and it's in its entire premise to begin with. The ideal relationship, I don't know why he goes into this bullshit, but between humans and nature is enough. We work with the land, forage for food, till the soil, produce crops, and after the laborious harvest season. Oh, and again, I can hear the marching morons over there, fucking idiots about allergies. This, again, is why you have an idiotic society who cannot reason, and thought stupidity like that, by the way, would get people to save them from their own stupidity. Marching morons. Again, from the aside from the when dipshits failed that you should probably read in the future. Should be another one to read. We enjoy the fruits of the land and conserve the surplus for the winter months. Well, what he's describing here is kind of like that that whole Protestant sort of work ethic that, Henderson, if you've ever seen me watching this stuff, describes. And apparently, this is the difference between people who are civilized and not third world idiots, is that they do this. They conserve the surplus for the winter months, or like in the what I've been describing before, how people save for their retirements. But there are these idiots who are not able to produce anything throughout their lives, or they're just going about it in a idiotic, maybe spendthrift manner, and then they just expect everybody to bail them out at the end, or when they do come to that time when they should be retiring or whatnot, or even better, that the government should do it for them. Unexpected calamities may occur: a drought, a rough season, a case of blight or disease, but sure enough, with care and patience, the cycle reassumes its course, and we reap what we sow in time. And that's the funniest part with these idiots who are just nothing but shit parasites invoking Jesus too. They don't actually have that in the Bible, but they should. Most of us today don't work with nature anymore. We go to offices, sit at desks, take home paychecks, feed our families and pay the bills, and hopefully come away with something at the end of the month to put away into the family nest egg. Yet the basic principle still stands. It is entirely natural for us to store away a portion of the harvest into savings and conserve it for colder seasons. But the human institution today is no longer harmonious with the natural economy. Yeah, because it's all money changer falsities, like fractional reserve banking, or absurdities, as I should put it. The money in the paycheck is not as real as the food we harvest and eat. Yeah, they can print all the money they want. They're not going to be buying any real food with it. This is because our modern society has been collectively systematized into the abstract. Your saving is no longer grain in a storehouse, nor is it silver in a purse or gold in a vault. It's a number on the screen of a bank's website. Refresh the page and it may be gone. And that's exactly what they had happen over there at IndyMac in 2008. And what they'll be having here, or I guess throughout the world too, in very many banks. This isn't populist anger, it is plain enough that the abstract system is already out of balance with the natural economy. It speaks, and again, that's the absurdity too, where you can take a look at the balance sheets of these banks, and you can see what's happened already, like with this example in IndyMac, and yet you will still see the dirty liars on the dirty liar media cheerleading this stuff and saying, oh no, everything's gonna be fine, it's all okay, there's nothing wrong here. And then you look at the numbers and you see, the bank is insolvent. Dirty little fucking liars. And it's just that absurd. They actually think people are so dumb or so ignorant, well, I guess they are, that they're just going to believe everything is fine. Oh, and even better, if you can count that somehow you have a mental disorder. You didn't go along with their lie. Fucking scumbags. Dirty lying pseudosciences, too. Speaks an entirely different language. Instead of a physical reward, earners are given a nominal sum. You better hope that sum isn't capped at a wage while the government's pool of printed money drowns its real purchasing power. Instead of savings that are concrete and ready to hand for the future, savers are forced to put away their time and labor into the black hole of the risk otherwise known as a bank, or incompetency, probably a better word. Throughout history, great civilizations collapse when human institutions mistake themselves to be unaccountable to any objective standard of measure and reward, kind of like what I was just describing a few minutes ago, and where they think themselves to float above the tides of nature, or rationality. To believe that we are exempt from this universal law is either a sign of great imprudence or perilous maleficence. In my book, The Natural Order of Money, I read it, I argued, maybe it's worth reading, I argue that there are two economies, the real economy and the service economy. Well, I guess that is worth reading. He just calls the debt serfs, as I call them, I guess the service economy. The role of money is to balance the relationship between these two sectors in relation to our shared environment of the natural world. My conclusion is that only natural money can achieve this function. A bank run can and will take place even if natural money is used, but there is a great distinction in the possible actions available to the government. A modern bank run predicated on fiat money, as we have seen by the recent bailouts, no longer provides a check on the system. Rather, it consolidates the system into smaller but more powerful central banking institutions. While central banks swiftly print new money to provide liquidity to the banks facing runs, this digital money is just as swiftly withdrawn from the falling bank into a larger, systematically important bank, or instead into a government bond. In other words, the bailouts reinforce the system itself by socializing the failure and privatizing the gains, which is again the best part of socialism, isn't it? They're all equal. They're all equal now in failure and poverty as well. With natural money, a bank run has to be respected. It cannot be papered over by devaluing the purchasing power of society's savers. Well, that's exactly what they did. And this in turn would allow the government and central banks to actually complete the task they set out for themselves last year, which was supposed to be to fight inflation, not print more currency. And central banks are compelled by social media trending hashtags. Again, the idiocy of social media. In evanescent hysteria to bail out failed banks, they fail in their primary duty to society as the privileged administrators of money as a social contract. The result of this folly is another deferral to the inevitable rebalancing of our abstract economies with the natural world. Which is the best part. They then get to live in their little mud huts. They get real in touch with nature. And again, don't forget why. Because you didn't pay your tithe, didn't make your donations, and Jesus is angry. Put in the Bitcoin wallet there in the description. And don't forget, you get your Billionaire Boys Club shirts there for your donations. Make sure to donate now.